Good evening and welcome to the ATW's second lecture as part of our International Speaker Series. It's coinciding with the Kate Derum Award and the Irene Davies Emerging Artist Award for Small Tapestries. My name is Caroline Johnston and I'm the convener of the Friends of the Australian Tapestry Workshop. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Palawa people who are the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm zooming this evening. I would also like to pay respect to their elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present. To set the scene, I have behind me some of the current tapestries being woven at the workshop. They are part of the Weaving Futures tapestries on the looms, and they are well progressed. And if we were there at the workshop, you would be all talking and moving to your seats. However, there are some real and special benefits about having an international lecture series with an international speaker, Jilly Edwards. And we know that you're all in front of your screens wherever you are. Welcome to you all. The Kate Derum and Irene Davies Awards for Small Tapestries celebrate creativity and excellence in contemporary tapestry. The Kate Derum Award honours Kate Derum and her significant contribution to tapestry as an artist, weaver, teacher, and is generously supported by Susan Morgan. And the Irene Davies Emerging Artist Award for Small Tapestries was established to support early career weavers in the first 5 years of their tapestry practice. Elaine and Alan Davies generously support the award in memory of their mother, Irene Davies, a tapestry enthusiast and an avid supporter of the ATW. British tapestry artist Jilly Edwards was the recipient of the highly commended award in the 2013 Kate Derum Award and was also a finalist in 2015. She has studied tapestry at the Edinburgh College of Art and textiles at the West of England College of Art. Recent exhibitions include Hellreef 3, Small Tapestry Biennale London, Weaving New Worlds at the William Morris Gallery London, and Collect Open18 at Saatchi Gallery London. Jilly Edwards' tapestry practice is rooted in the practice of sketching and journaling her daily experiences. She records colours, textures, shapes and light, responses to the landscape she's traversing and the memories that are evoked by them. Her whimsical responses to the daily human experience are then translated into tapestry in the studio. These abstract weavings celebrate colour, tone and mark making. I was very pleased to see her work in the Here and Now exhibition in Bath at the Holborn Museum and was struck by the beauty of her weaving. And if you would like to ask a question during the talk, please send them through by clicking the Q&A button. We will try and answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the lecture. But now I'd like you to join me in welcoming Jilly Edwards. Jilly, over to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to talk. It's really exciting to think that I'm reaching out across to Australia and to other places. I thought I'd give you a little resume of how I started. I was given a small loom when I was 5-6 years old, a little wooden 2-shaft loom. I then went to school, senior school, where I had a teacher who was interested in textiles and encouraged me. I then went to art school in Bristol, the West of England College of Art, where rather than paint, I was introduced to the tapestry teacher in the weaving department. She wove huge, large, slightly brown 60s, very based on the Eastern European tapestries, and was very different from the kind of work that I wanted to do. But she showed me a wall full of yarns and different colours, and I was able to see that the possibilities were there for me. After going through art school, I taught in other local art schools and worked towards exhibitions. After 10 years, I had the opportunity to go to Edinburgh College of Art into the tapestry department, which really gave me a wonderful perspective on what I could do. They encouraged me to find a voice and to find a discipline, which is really necessary for being a tapestry weaver. Another 10 years on, having again taught in art schools, done residencies in schools and in art centres, we got to 25 years after I'd finished at art school, And I thought, it's time to really stand up and see if I can make a living at being a tapestry weaver. And so I set about getting exhibitions, solo ones, going to places that I could show my work. And with that came opportunities to travel even more. I'm very used to traveling and moving about in the UK, but I wanted to go further afield. So I came to Australia, I went to Japan, America, and all these things influenced me because of my love of travel. As I came sort of back from all these travels, I also moved house, and we went to live in Devon, which is in the southwest of England. I'll start sharing my screen. And what was really lovely was that I got funded by the Arts Council of England in the southwest to do a project that took me to a house just south of where I lived, which had been set up in the 30s, called Dartington Hall. Gosh, I'm losing the ability to move my pictures on. Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I'm going back all the way through my photos because we did a trial and I didn't go back to the beginning. So here we go. This house was a Bauhaus house that had been designed by an architect from Switzerland in the 30s. It was designed for the headmaster. By the time I came to look at it in 2009, it was housing the collection of artwork that the house had established over the 70 years. So I was doing journeys, doing research at the house, and I was given the chance to exhibit, but I wasn't allowed to put things on the wall, which is a little bit of a strange thing. So how can you show your work? I could only do small pieces. So every week I would get a train, then a bus, then walk to the house. And I collected things, words that I heard on the train, things that I read, collected my tickets. As I went then back home with drawings from around the house, things that I collected from looking at the archive, I wove a small strip 5 centimeters high by 12 centimeters long about that week. Then how do I display all these things? And I found these acrylic boxes which were open on one side and divided into 6 segments. So over the year, I filled these with every week's experience. Then it came to the exhibition. And as I said, I wasn't allowed to put anything on the wall. So they got put into places that were like the fireplace, which is where this piece is. And others were on top of bookcases, in between bits of furniture, on a shelf in the hall. It was a quiet intervention, which is what we called it, a sense of place, because it was about the journeying to and fro from my studio to their home, and also the sense of what the house meant to me. As this was going on and being looked at, it was up for 6 months in the house. I was offered an exhibition at the Ruthin Crafts Centre in North Wales. It's a beautiful new building, a wonderful centre for the crafts and arts, and they have huge, beautifully lit spaces. It was a wonderful experience, and they treated me beautifully. It then went out on tour for about 18 months, which meant that I went out on tour with it, because every venue it went to, we had another opening. Gosh, those were the days. And I ran workshops, gave talks. So at the end of the 18 months, I was slightly exhausted and wanting to know, and I hadn't done any new weaving during that time, a few small pieces, but one actually which was the beginning of new work, which came out to the Kate Derum, for which I won the highly commended. But I decided to take 4 months out and just go traveling around Britain, looking at exhibitions of different kinds of work, ceramics, sculpture, all kinds of things, which were just beautiful. The time that I went, I always travel by train because I don't drive, or buses, was the oilseed rape season. So fields were just covered in this lovely yellows. Varying, when I went to East Anglia, they were in full bloom, so strong yellows, also a strong smell being sucked in the air conditioning of the train. Going up to Scotland, gradually it got lighter or got greener. So lots of colours of yellow came into my sketchbooks. It was my birthday and I got given yellow sunflowers later on, and things were wrapped in yellow tissue paper. People didn't know that I was interested in this yellow, but it just seemed that everything around me was being influenced by it. There were lots of marks. I love maps, so probably because of the traveling. But I like to see the difference in fields, structures, whether it's a dry stone wall or a metal fence, or no fences, as in East Anglia. So I applied in the November of 2013 to the Crafts Council to do part of their Collect exhibition, which is international galleries. And I worked with a young design team called dr.me, and they said, why not have a vertical display of your work, which will stop people just cruising by and looking at the next person's work and the next person's work and getting muddled about who does what. They'll have to stop and start with the floor. You don't normally put tapestries on a floor, but here we are, one in a plinth, which people could stand and study. Children really enjoyed it because they were closer to it and could look at it. Then things on a plinth, going up the wall in small scale, then up into bigger pieces. This exhibition toured as well, which is lovely, but it does mean that you go out taking work. Things got added, things got bigger. Bigger spaces. Some galleries didn't want things on the floor. They were too worried about it. But it was a wonderful start to this yellow period. As it came to a close, so I was invited to take part in an exhibition which was called Here and Now, which was international tapestry weavers, organised by Leslie Miller from the University College of Arts in Farnham. It started at Sleaford at the National Centre for Craft and Design, a place now called the Hub, and was full of work from all over the world. Was really exciting to see and to be part of. Again, I was very lucky. I got funded to do a big piece of work. The piece I did, which Caroline said she'd seen at Bath, which was lovely, was 160 by 160 and was going to take me probably about a year to weave. That's doing one tapestry over a year's period with all the drawings and everything and finishing. And I'd like to have something small on the go whilst I'm doing a big piece, just so that you can finish it. And I decided that every week I would do a little drawing and weave it. It was very simple. It was just divisions of an 8 centimetre square in different sections, and use the yarns that I'd used that week. I wove 52 of these tapestries. This is an image of when it was at NCCD with a Japanese artist alongside me, and Joan Baxter on the far wall as well. You can see that the big tapestry has actually got a gap between the top part and the bottom part, which is the horizon. It was based around a drawing that I'd been doing actually in Cornwall, of dry stone walls. So again, the walls came into it, but the walls were covered in lichen, and also in the little spots where the dry stone meet, little wildflowers had started to grow, thrift, beautiful little yellow flowers, brown leaves. It was wonderful. So here's the large tapestry when it was at Bath, and alongside the 52 little tapestries, one from each week, using every last thread. So the big tapestry is called Within the Walls, and the small pieces were called Every Last Thread. I wasn't thinking of putting them together, but Leslie said she'd like to have both, which was a very great honour. But then how to frame them, and that was quite sort of scary because 52 frames is quite expensive. So in the end, I chose to put them into CD boxes. So I bought 100 CD boxes, took out the bit that takes the disc, which just pops out, and you can slide it in through little clear acrylic lugs on the side, and it clips down shut. Very easy to display, very easy and relatively inexpensive. I will say, it's good to try things out in these. I sewed them onto an acid-free board, and then the board slid in. The CD boxes do come in a variety of thicknesses, so you have to be careful if you decide to use it. Here's one of the little tapestries being woven. During this period of this exhibition, I worked again with the team from Manchester, dr.me, and they produced a book about the whole of this yellow experience. They asked, "What's it mean to you?" And I said, "Oh, it's been a joy to do." And they said, "There's the title of the book." The then editor of Crafts magazine here in the UK laughed and said, "Oh, yellow is the new blue, Jill." So we got a subtitle of joy, "Yellow is the new blue." It came as a screen printed box, and inside the box was, on the right-hand side, as you look at this picture, is the book, which is about 200 pages of sketches, finished articles, written work, poetry, lots of things, again, that I collected. On the left, there's another board that fitted on top, and that contains a little flip book and an enamel brooch. So time moves on. Again, it's been quite a long period of time with this exhibition going out. And so I've moved house. I've come back to Bristol, during which time I fell over and injured my back, which meant that I was confined to upstairs and not being able to weave. So the drawings that I did were from our first floor sitting room, which looks out over trees and running down to the river and up the other side of the river into the main part of Bristol. We faced west. First time I've ever had a house that faces west. So I was stunned by these wonderful sunsets. So I started to do drawings, but it was slightly fragmented time because I had to go to have physiotherapy to try and get me to be able to move again. I could only weave something very tiny. So I wove a tiny maquette, which you can see on the right-hand side, a little thin strip. I again submitted it to the Crafts Council to collect a second time. Evidently, I'm the only person to have probably been mad enough to want to do it for a second time. But it was a wonderful experience. This time, rather like the piece on the floor, I wanted people to be able to look at it closely. So I designed and made a 4.5 meter table by 60 centimeters. They accepted, obviously, the maquette for me to do. So I then had to weave the pieces full size. In one direction, they are all 40 centimeters. But then the other way, they're either 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters, 40. There was one 80 by 40. And here you get to see slightly closer that on the table, it was fixed down with Velcro. And I had magnifying glasses so people could pick up the glasses and inspect the work. They could also inspect it if they were in a wheelchair, because by this time I'd got out of my wheelchair, but realized how difficult it is to see work when you're in a wheelchair and how it's displayed. I also made, there were 13 sections for a year's work of 13 28-day segments. Obviously, some are smaller and some are larger, as I've said, but the smaller ones denote that I didn't have a very long month. I was being tortured at the physiotherapist instead. So they were tinier. But I also made 13 little pieces that went into the CD boxes again and were in the drawers underneath, along with brochures. Here's the long table with them all on. I continued with this vein of work, of working in segments. This was a piece called Brave World, which went to Walthamstow, again, an exhibition organised by Leslie Miller. And across the road, we have trees, which in a small sort of green area. And they really rustled and rippled and whispered. It was sort of trying to tell me something. There were dark times, there were rich times. There's even a little bit of yellow still. It isn't that I've pulled the warp too tight. They were shaped to have these gaps in between and to be slightly different levels of work. I did a series of these pieces of work showing the reds of the sunsets and the trees. And then this is, after all these exhibitions, I wanted to do something that I wanted to do just for me. So again, I wove, this is a piece being woven and was for an exhibition that was to start in 2020. Of course, it didn't start, but I have this large tapestry ready to go. And again, about the trees and the colour. So what happens? You're sitting thinking, what am I going to do next? And in comes a request. Would I go to Cambridge and talk to the officers at Newnham College, Cambridge University, who were building this new building, and they were looking to commission 2 tapestries. That was really exciting for me because my mother and her sisters were born and brought up in Cambridge, and I'd spent many a holiday in Cambridge, going to all sorts of different exhibitions and concerts in King's College. So it was a bit like going home for me. They were wonderful clients. They had a really good budget. And I wove 2 tapestries which had to be ready for the building to be opened. I'm sorry, these aren't wonderful quality photographs. They are in situ, and we're still waiting for new photographs to be taken. This really gave me the opportunity financially to think about what I was going to do next. 2 tapestries, selling or being commissioned. I'd had some sales to museums, one at Manchester, the Whitworth, which has a big collection of textiles. So for the first time, I think in all my life, I had some money, and I thought, right, what am I going to do? I don't want to just go back to weaving whatever I was weaving. I want to look forward. So I took the opportunity to go to a centre just for drawing. My studio, which is absolutely beautiful, is not big enough to do big drawings. I don't have enough wall space. So I wanted to go and do big drawings and experiment with mark making. So the Drawing Project UK is at a town, small town, market town, with a huge textile history, about 40 minutes away on the train. So I arranged with them that yes, I could have a studio there for 5 weeks. It had 4 huge white walls and roof lights. Perfect. At the end of my street is a little train station. I could get on there at 9:30 in the morning, arrive at the studio by 10:30, leave at 5:30 and be home by 6:30. What's not to like? So what happens? You go with a new sketchbook, it's blank, rolls of paper, and actually I'd been given some photographs, big black and white photographs, which were 4 foot square, that I could pin up on the wall, which helped take away that frightening moment of looking at a blank wall with large sheets of white paper on. First day, I'm sitting on the station and this large yellow train comes in. We don't have large yellow trains. It was a network rail train that goes through checking lines. Never seen it before. Second thing, into my phone media comes an article about pioneering women called Yellow Thread. So I took that as a start point and wrote things and took photographs, as you see, of the train. On the journey, there is this hedge. There's several, there's some fences. Actually, some of them are to do with racing, horse racing, and they use them to train horses about what they're looking at, what they're going to encounter when they come to fences. Do they go on a right-hand bend or a left-hand bend? How high is it? How high do they have to jump? Right, but I loved this hedge. I thought it was just perfect. Very neat, kept very trim, beautiful stems underneath, no sort of undergrowth, and willowy willows wafting in the background. So my first drawings, this is a drawing or part of a drawing that's about 120 by 120 centimeters, 4 foot average. Using the photographs, I covered it with gesso and white paint and then started working into it, looking at the hedges. I did small ones too. Again, the liking of doing this large work, but also wanting to do small pieces. So with offcuts of paper, I would do small drawings at the end of the day, often priming pieces of paper, putting them into my sketchbook and drawing as I went along on the train. Gradually, as the weeks went by, I started to get more simplified ideas. These are some of the works that I've eventually got to weave once I came back after the 5 weeks. Very simplified pieces of work. These pieces, this piece is 40 by 40. This piece is 10 by 3.5 centimeters. So again, a variety of sizes. This was one of the drawings that I simplified down. I started doing, and I often do, too fussy drawings with too much detail. And really it's a question of taking away. So after the first week, I took down the big drawings that I'd done on the black and white photographs, which had helped me get through that initial period of, oh, what am I going to do with this lovely white paper? Am I going to make a mess on it? It didn't matter. By the second week, I was free enough to be splashing colour about, sticking tissue paper up, tearing bits of paper and changing things as I went on. Sorry, oops. Ooh. This is the parts of the weaving At the end of the second week, we put the clocks back, and it got darker. Also, the weather became very inclement. And the third week, we got held in the train alongside a river in one of the small towns. And it was very black. The river was very full. Underneath, you could see the swirl of the reeds, but the surface was almost like glass. After quite a long delay, the sun came out and the buildings alongside were reflected into this shiny black surface. The buildings are of a limestone oolite, which normally are rather yellow, but instead of that, it was very pink. And I was thinking, pink? I don't do pink. But by that time, as I said, I got very confident about what I was doing, and I just went with it and covered the wall with lots of papers, lots of drawings, pink, this misty trees that were willow trees, texture. I started doing some small weavings when I came home, and using this sort of pink thread. It was quite difficult to match all the sort of colorings of what I'd started to draw. But it was that I found that since doing the yellow pieces with the Wanderlust series, that this was the first time that I felt this real excitement about what I was doing, that I knew what I wanted to achieve. I wanted the shadows, but I wanted something really, really simple. I didn't want things that were too fussy. Of course, as I came home, so the world was changing. It was the end of 2019. And I got all these drawings laid out on my tables. I couldn't pin them up because I don't have the space, but I could look at them. And where was I going to take this? I started with the yellow drawings and started to sample and do tests. And for the next 7-8 months, when we got locked down for the first time, I just wove these tapestries, creating all the yellow ones. The only things that I had on my wall, which, as you can see behind me in my studio, still some of the pink drawings are on the wall. So as I was weaving these yellow tapestries, so I was looking at these pink drawings. At the end of this year, I'd done 7 40 by 40 tapestries in yellow and 8 small tapestries, varying in size from the 8 by 3.5 centimeters to 10 centimeters square. Quite a body of work. And we looked like we might get a little bit of more freedom, but after Christmas, it was obvious that we were not going to get that freedom. And surprise, surprise. So I thought, right, I've got to do something with this pink drawings, and I've got to address it and see whether it does work. As I said, I loved it. I really enjoyed doing this work and actually experiencing something very new. It's always so encouraging to start something. It's always scary, as any tapestry will tell you, tapestry weaver will tell you. Right at the bottom, it seems like a long way to go. Is it right? You have all the drawings, you've made your decisions, you've done your sampling, but you've got to start. And so I did. And so for the last 4 months, I've been weaving these pink, black, white, pearl colored tapestries. Now, things are starting to change. We're getting things opening. Galleries have been allowed, commercial galleries have been allowed to be open for a month and have visitors. You have to book mostly, or they'll only allow so many people in at a time. From today, yesterday, state museums have been allowed to be open. So the places like the V&A you can go to, and the British Museum, and the Tates in St Ives and London and Liverpool. So we're starting to see questions coming in. Have you got any work? Would you be willing to take part in an exhibition? It's really exciting because, yes, I've got a body of work. I've got a double body of work. I've got my yellow work, which I took from my first 2.5 weeks and my first 7 weeks. And now I've got a slightly smaller body of work of pink works. So they're now, in the next month, going out to exhibitions in Bath, or near Bath, London, and Arundel in Sussex, which is really exciting. So I've worked again with the young design team in Manchester, Dr. Me, and they produced a double-ended book for me, which is at the printers. So you go through the yellow work and the discussions about what I did, and then you turn the book over and you go through the pink ones. So one gallery is going to have all pink and one gallery is going to have all yellow. So hopefully we're at the beginning of a new stage. I've now put on a warp behind me. You can see just the beginnings of it. And it's a piece 150 by 150. So quite large. It's going to take me about a year to weave. But I also weave things on the small loom, which is alongside me. The loom behind is a Shannock loom, and the other loom on this side, whichever left-hand side, is a scaffolding loom, which I tie a small wooden loom into. So there we are. We're looking at my studio, which is the door on the right is up to home. The door in front of you is into the studio. So I have home and studio in one, in the south of Bristol. And it really couldn't be better. Of course, we've struggled, all of us, during the pandemic, but hopefully we're coming through the other side. I've had both injections. That shows how old I am. But we are going to move forward. We are going to send work, hopefully, to ATW's Kate Derum Award. I'm hoping that I might get selected. I don't presume, but I have done a piece. I'm very excited to be submitting it and to be part of the world's wonderful network of tapestry weavers. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me chatter. I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. And thank you very much for having me to talk. Over to you, Caroline.
Well, Jilly, that was just wonderful. Thank you for sharing so generously your wonderful insights into your collective practice. We have some questions already, but I'm keen to have some more questions from the audience. So keep on sending through on the Q&A. Perhaps if I can start off first, Jilly. It seemed to me in what you were talking about that you displayed such a clear view of your own honesty about your practice, both in terms of, you know, the fear of starting a tapestry to the clarity about your creative process and that, you know, the fear of starting on white walls, so you put something else up and start. Have you always had such honesty and such clarity about how you're going about your practice?
I think Edinburgh taught me that practice. I can't know it all, you know, whether it's for drawing, for weaving, whatever you do, you can always learn. You know, I don't think I'm at the end of my learning life. I think even as I weave, so I learn. You know, I've learned about pinks. I don't do pink, although I am wearing, I hope you noticed.
Jilly, can I interrupt and ask you to stop sharing your screen, and then everyone can see you and see your pink scarf again?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have you back. Terrific. So sorry to interrupt you, but maybe just go over that a little bit again, and then you can.
Okay, you know.
Honesty. Yeah, that was terrific.
Yes. You know, it's just wonderful to, I think with honesty, you move forward for yourself. If you say, oh no, I know it all, you know, I'm not scared of doing this, oh, I'll just do it. I could just weave anything, you know, or draw anything, but what would it be right? And I think with that sort of, gosh, I'm scared, gosh, I'm nervous, gosh, will this work, comes a sort of inner calm, but also an inner anxiety. But those two things work off each other and really help. I think it's essential, you know. And gosh, if I can help anybody, I'm more than happy to do that, you know. And if me saying, oh, I'm sitting at the bottom of the tapestry and is this going to work? And somebody else goes, oh, I didn't think you'd ever feel like that. Oh, excuse me, it's scary, you know. It's, oh, you know.
And great to share that. We've got some lovely notes here. Thank you for such a wonderful, fully inspiring talk. And a question from Karen Penny. Will you go back to making more large drawings after your recent experience?
Yes. I'm sort of saving some pennies and hopefully I'll go, oh, that's a pun on Karen's name. And going back to the drawing project site again. I really enjoyed being there because there were other artists working. So whereas my studio at home, you know, it's solitary, I'm here. I get to see people going past my door, which is lovely. And I talk to them when I'm allowed to. But going to work in another studio where there's somebody else humming a different tune, using different medium, it's very exciting. And it's only an hour away on the train. It's not far. It was £7 on the train, you know, return. You know, okay, I can do that. And they were wonderful at the studio. And they're about drawing. They know about drawing. There were painters. There was a shoemaker there as well, but he drew feet. You know, so there was all sorts of interesting things to glean whilst I was there. So yes, I will go back and will do bigger drawings. You know, it is the problem. I don't have a big enough studio. Isn't it always a problem? You know, we can fill our spaces, but, oh, we could do with another space slightly bigger, you know. Yes, well, you know, I'll go to Trowbridge instead and go to the drawing project.
And a lovely question. Are there any tapestry weavers that inspire you as much as you inspire us? That's from Emma Jo Webster.
Oh, there are too many. You know, I seem to hit Edinburgh at a great time. I had Maureen Hodge and Fiona Matheson as my tutors. And for 10 years before, I had watched them and seen their work. And it was only because I moved from Bath in Somerset in South England up to Yorkshire that I felt that Edinburgh was close enough. I could do it in a day on the train. And I went up to see them, you know, and here were my heroes. You know, terrifying to meet them. And they said, please bring a portfolio. Ah, you know, I think my knees knocked all the way up and all the time I was there. But they're two of my absolute heroes. I'd met Archie before, but he by that time, I think, was in Papua New Guinea. There are people like Sack Shaw, who was the stained glass artist, but also had worked at the Dovecot. But I was a student with a girl called Rosemary, who was Australian. And she was a special student, the same as I was. And then there was Fiona Hutchison, who was a student when I was there. Joe Barker and Sarah Brennan came as I finished. But there's this sort of network of artists that you just love their work and love how they do it. I've got work by all those artists. I loved coming to Australia with one of my trips and coming to ATW and seeing artists I didn't know about. And traveling the world does that. It opens your eyes. It stops you being insular. You can see things in books, of course you can, but to turn up at ATW and to stand on the floor with the size of tapestries by artists, a lot indigenous to Australia. I remember an artist, Ginger, somebody, a wonderful artist who was having a tapestry being woven whilst I was there. Oh, just spectacular. I like most tapestry weavers, you know, just for being plucky enough to do it. But I think those are some of the main. There's people like Joan Baxter as well, who'd been at and Karen and Catherine, who do different work. It's just lovely. I love to see the artists that work for the studios and how it influences them, but how they do their own work. I think that's an amazing skill as well. So yes,
Ginger was Ginger Riley. I'm being informed.
Yes. Oh, love it. Love the work. Oh, yes.
Now, a few other questions. Valerie Kirk was asking, will you exhibit the drawings as well as the final artworks as well?
The Bath London Gallery, which is the same gallery, but they've got two venues. They've asked for the drawings as well, which, you know, that's very scary. That's almost scarier than showing the tapestries, you know, and thinking about how you want to frame them. But yes, I've said tentatively that I'll show some, but, you know, I won't show all of them. The gallery in London and near Bath is called 8 Holland Street, which is the address in London, but they've kept the same title for their gallery, which was in Bath, but now is outside in a place called Mells. And then the gallery in Arundel is called Gallery 57. But at the moment, she's just having the tapestries. I haven't talked to her about showing the drawings. It is, you know, I think it's essential. But also the gallery in London want some of the sketchbooks and the samples that I've done as well. That's really nice, but they've got more space. Gallery 57 is a smaller gallery, so they're restricted in what they can show. But the London Gallery is a big space, so they're going to have a cabinet full of sketchbooks as well. So that's good.
Jilly, what was the time frame between that installation in the fireplace and then the installation in the centre in Wales? I mean, that just such polar opposites in scale.
Yes, 18 months. Yeah. It was, but the one in Wales was really a retrospective, although I did say I don't like that word because I always feel you've got to die to have a retrospective, and I wasn't prepared to do that for them. So we sort of avoided that, but it was 40 years worth of work, and we got work back. So I didn't have to weave all new work, but I did do quite a bit. But that was wonderful. And, you know, you can add things as it tours. If things sold and people were keen to take things after one exhibition, as long as it wasn't too big a piece, then we'd let them, and I would have woven something new perhaps, and we could put it in. We didn't put everything up from the 40 years, certainly not.
Looked wonderful. Jilly, you talked about having open studios, but do you find even when your studio is closed that through the glass passerbys show interest in your work?
Oh, yes, because we had more walkers. You know, people were walking up and down our street who normally drove, and they weren't driving to work or going to school. So there were lots of passerbys, you know, and they would sort of press their nose to the window and wave. And when we were allowed to have the door open, they would stay outside and talk to me through the door. And that's been great. People have found me, you know, which is lovely. Yeah.
Jilly, perhaps you better tell us about the scarf you're wearing.
Oh, This is Sarah Lindsay's idea of helping the nurses. And this is number, I think it's 17, yes. And she sent us this gingham with little sort of cross on it and words to embroider across, which said COVID-19 sort of walking. Gosh, I can't read my own writing. Walking for nurses. Sorry, yes, I ought to know that. So we were sent the words and we embroidered them onto our scarves, and then we went out. And she did it, and she had a pinstripe skirt because she'd had some pinstripe fabric for a long time, and she embroidered on the fabric. I don't wear skirts. I wear pinafores all the time. So my son's fiance is a dressmaker. She creates new things out of old things as well, which is, very much in vogue. But she made me a pinafore. I'll stand up, but you can't see. But I have a kick pleat down the back, which you can't see, which I've embroidered up the back. So when I go out to walk, I put the pinafore dress on and the scarf and have conversations with people about why am I wearing a pink scarf and why have I got embroidery up the back of my dress and what does it say, which probably says a lot about my stitching. Is not very good that they can't read it. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing to sort of celebrate what the nurses and the medical profession have done for us.
It is indeed. Thanks, Jilly. And probably one last question from Bridget Lane. Do you have any tips for weavers who are just starting to exhibit but not yet able to be a full-time weaver and produce large or multiple work?
I don't think it matters about size. We don't have castles, or we don't all weave for British Embassy or whatever, like a studio can do. Just do it. Do what you can and exhibit it. Do your best work. Think about how you're going to frame it as well, to enhance the work, whether it's just into a little tray without glazing, or, like the CD boxes. 100 CD boxes cost me £22, which I think is probably about $40 Australian dollars, something like that, for 100. Well, they look great when they're up on the wall all together. You can put postcards in them and one tapestry, or little drawings and one tapestry. So you can make a little set. You can make something bigger. The 52 little tapestries, when they were on the wall, were 50 centimetres wide and 180 drop. Now that's a sizable tapestry when you put it all together, but I could weave one a week. So you can accumulate them, do them all the same size. You don't have to, but then you can put them into the same boxes. So you can make a large piece of work out of a lot of small pieces, which, isn't quite weaving big tapestries, but, just do it, just start, and soon you'll have enough that you'll be able to put into an exhibition and show your work.
Jilly, that was such encouraging words. I think it's time to wrap up, and I do really want to thank you. It's just been the most wonderful evening, and thank you for your time and being here with us and sharing it across the world. And perhaps to remind everyone, visit the ATW website or visit the ATW in person now that we can, and learn more about the 2021 Kate Derum Award and the Irene Davies Emerging Artist Award for Small Tapestries. And the most important thing is entries for this year's awards will open on the 25th of June and close on the 9th of August.
Yes.
So again, Jilly, thank you so much. Can't thank you enough for a very inspiring and honest and enthusiastic, enthusing others, like the question about it. You have inspired us so much, inspiring all of us. Thank you to everyone who's attended tonight's lecture from wherever you are, and please keep an eye on the website of the ATW to be abreast of all the exhibitions, projects and amazing things that will take place in the future. Good night to everyone, and thanks again, Jilly. I hope you're sharing a round of applause with me. Thanks so much, Jilly, and everyone for being part of it. Good night.
Yes, night. Bye.